The records are now open. All right, Brad, stay in this meditational state before we move back into conversation, and just silently, in whatever words feel right for you, express your intention for the intelligence that you want to extract today. I'm going to do the same thing. And then just ask for the highest level guides who hold the highest levels of wisdom that we can access and that are relevant to where we're at. Cool. And then when you're ready, some slow blinks, come on back into your body. I'll turn the music down. How are you feeling?
Good.
Good. Okay. All right. Talk to me about what questions you have.
When we had lunch the other day, I expressed a concern about October 4th.
Mm-hmm.
Always hoping for the best, but could be preparing for the worst. I'd just like to ask Akashic Records if they could offer any insight on the FEMA emergency broadcast test and the frequency waves that may be coming through 5G.
Okay. Cool. That's a good question. All right. And before I tap in, well, I'll just say this. There is definitely a stream of intelligence and consciousness that wants to speak. And this also represents the highest level of intelligence that I, Emily, the human representing or partnering with this energy, can bring through. So as you learn to do this too and tune into your imagination, which you might notice that things begin to flow as I do this, you're going to get a perspective as well from a slightly different vibrational frequency, not necessarily higher or lower. It's just because you have different experience than I do.
Sure.
Cool. Okay. So I'm tapping in here. So the first thing that the guides want to address is outcome, and future always exists in infinite possibility. Interestingly enough, the past also exists in infinite possibility, although, I mean, it's hard enough for humans to wrap our mind around non-linear time anyway. We're getting to the point where we're like, oh, all right, it makes sense. The future exists in infinite possibility. But the future existing in infinite past is still a bit of a mind blow. But the guides are saying that's actually an important component, will be an important component at one point along the way when it comes to a plan of how to uncreate or disassemble this construct. Back to the idea of the future exists in infinite possibility, and it moves from the energy of infinite possibility into probability into our reality based on how much energy is put on each one of the variables. So that's important to know, and that explains, vibrationally how we still have an influence in the future, and we can still avert disaster on this one.
Good.
And there has been a significant amount of, they're calling it fear propaganda, that is bringing this into a potential reality. Okay, here's what they're saying about the story. Stories exist infinitely as well, and it's not so much if the story is true or not, it's the power of the story that changes you. The guides are saying, so we've got to look at this storyline of a dark agenda that's presenting and wanting to depopulize the planet. Well, would you say that's what the core of the agenda is? Or, I mean, you could speak more intelligently on that. Or why
it is the core of the agenda is to depopulate and to activate the bioweapon payload, which is stored in people and will release on a 18 gigahertz pulsation, which has been admitted by FEMA that they're going to do on Wednesday of this coming week.
Mhm. So if we were to take that philosophy, it doesn't matter whether it's true or not, and it's the power of the story that changes you. And we look at the story of fear, of darkness and light. This is a question for you, Brad, from the guides. How do you feel about the theory, construct, idea that the universe is always conspiring for our best interest and our good?
The universe is conspiring for our best
Mhm.
interest and good. And there's even a word for that
Ooh,
called
what is it?
Peronia. It's the opposite of paranoia. It's the
Oh.
sneaking suspicion that the universe is conspiring on our behalf.
Mhm. And so, spending time exploring and as a visionary, inviting others to explore, um, if this were the universe conspiring on our behalf, what would that look like? Or why is this good? Basically, does that make sense? It's almost like we need to challenge ourselves to look at ourselves as the storytellers, but from a different perspective. Like the narrator has to change perspective. Does that make sense?
Yes, it's an individual basis because everybody is feeling this in their own way. So if the universe is conspiring to help each one of us, it's happening on individual levels. But I
Hmm.
suppose if you're not even aware of pronia or the whole idea, that you wouldn't even know it exists.
Hmm. And you're right that the work needs to be done on an individual level, 100%. The guides are saying, and you're also right. The work is only being done in an isolated individual landscape right now. They're saying, for lack of a better terminology, and we've got to come together in community and create purposeful. Well, I mean, think of Native American tribes who one of the jobs in that culture is to be a visionary, and they go out into the woods and they do whatever they do, and then they envision the future of the tribe and they hold ceremony. And this is done with purposeful creation.
Yes.
That needs to be brought back to help fix this. To help fix it long term. The guides are saying, let's stick with 10-4 right now though, and talk about what people need to do and who needs to do what. That's what they want to talk about next. But let me just ask, how is that landing for you? What's coming through?
Well, again, every individual has their own free will. Every individual is going to take this on in their own way or not. People may not feel any kind of calling whatsoever, and therefore it's gonna not be present. But for those who are paying attention, or those who do have a sneaking suspicion that the universe is out to conspire on their behalf, they should be paying attention to what is going on in the world, in the macro world, because we live in a free will world. Everything that is being done to us has to be pre-announced. If people don't heed that warning, then the powers that are doing this feel that, well, we told them what we're going to do. And it's called the revelation of the method. If they don't pay attention, then it's their own damn fault and they get what's coming to them.
Okay. What's your next question?
What can we do to protect ourselves if we are going to be assaulted with these 5G frequencies?
Okay. They're inviting you into linguistics and a different word around assault because of that high frequency charge and the story that that carries around being a victim. And not to say from some circumstances that isn't true, or some vantage points that isn't true. But the guys are saying from that vantage point of being the victim, you're not going to find the fucking solution. So you got to ask from the perspective of God mind or higher, or the universe is conspiring for our good. If you had to change that word and give me something that was softer than, or that didn't put you into victimhood, what would you choose?
You mean what word would I
Yeah,
choose?
just give me a different word, a more empowered word.
Yeah, empowerment. That's the word. How can we
Okay.
be more empowered?
Okay. Yes, the frequency of this feels so much better.
Cool.
So much better. And that's okay. Step one is recognizing that this storyline is inviting this exact pursuit for every hero, every person who takes on this initiative, the guides are saying. And that is, am I going to look at myself as a victim, or am I going to take the invitation to become more empowered?
Hmm.
Okay. It's in essence, they're the same energy, but they're extra. The focus or the consciousness is driven in different directions. Just like
Hmm.
fear and potential are the same energy, just driven in different directions. So, working on that aspect of the mindset, if the individual is awake enough and aware enough to observe the subtle frequencies of the mind, not everybody is going to be at that level, but everybody is still participating. So, it's really it's important for those who are aware and awake to meet people where they are without judgment. The advice that has been coming through channels who are tapped into this thought form, the guides are saying, they're talking about turning your phones off and putting them in the microwave or a Faraday bag.
Hmm.
If that feels like what you're being called to do, great option.
Hmm.
Now, I noticed, I feel like this is not so much the guides puppeting me right now. This is Emily talking to you, like, when we were having lunch the other day and we were talking about this. Um, I noticed a little bit of fear coming up, but not a lot. And when I felt very neutral, and I was asking you a lot of questions that I think some people could have thought were antagonistic. I think you felt they weren't coming from an antagonistic place, but you really answered them in terms of why I should even pay attention to this, because I purposely guard what comes into my field. So it doesn't taint and charge my energy with fear. So I know if something drops into my field, especially from an esteemed colleague and dear friend like you, I'm going to pay attention. That's
Hmm.
penetrating the veil. So I instantly felt that inclination to ask, okay, how do I show up? What do I do in this? And I shared with you I don't, maybe I do secret missions like this more than I realize. I mean, just in my own world. But like we talked about before, I feel like I do the work on my own microcosm as I'm alchemizing myself and my own shit and my patterns and just, really truthfully embodying myself. I'm doing the work on that level. There are times when the guides bring into my field an invitation to do the work in mission style. with other light workers here on the planet. And I was sharing with you a technology that came into my field on one of these like secret Avenger style missions. And I really feel like that's going to work here in this situation to be present online while they're doing this and install this mirrored technology so their energy of destruction just wipes them out.
Mm-hmm.
And I also feel like because I haven't plugged into this thought form a whole lot, I don't have a lot of charge around it in my body and I feel like I'm not scared. So I feel like that's a way that I'm being called to show up. And oh, this is the other weird thing. Sorry to snap at you, but I get excited. This time that they're going to do it, October 4th, we're supposed to shut them off 11 to 1 Pacific time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe it's the 11th. It could be the 11th too. This is the exact time that my show, my live show, which I feel like is a gift and a service that I love sharing with humanity to help humanity, is scheduled to go. So am I go live? Am I going to go hide and hunker down? I don't know. It doesn't feel aligned. I feel like like the rebel in me is like, fuck you all. Fuck you. You can't do this to no. So that's how I'm showing up. And I'm curious what you think about that, especially.
Well, perhaps being naive is just also being a little bit ignorant of a clear and present danger. And I know that this is not something anybody is really happy about or wants to see, but we are living on a prison planet that is very intent on depopulating about 90% of us. This was very clear in the very first tenet of the Georgia Guidestones,
Mm-hmm.
where it said to live in balance with nature at 500 million people. Well, that's about a 90% reduction. So they're putting it out there for all of us to see. If we don't have eyes to see, then we're not going to know.
Okay. I cannot that that is true. I can't deny that is not true. I know that's a double negative. But it's interesting because when you say they put it out there for our eyes to see, we're admitting that we're allowing them to program and determine the future of what it is by what they show us and what we're willing to see. What if we say, fuck you, I'm not willing to see that? I'm not seeing that. That's
And
the
you can deny
rallying
it.
of,
You could say it doesn't exist, but if
well, I'm not saying
FEMA
that.
has already announced that they're going to do a frequency test with all the 5G towers across the country, including Hawaii, Alaska, and Puerto
Yeah,
Rico, then you can't say you haven't been pre-warned.
right. Well, the things that we can do to protect ourselves from 5G, just like shutting it off in the microwave, like we talked about, great things to do. Visualizing protection and put yourself in a bubble of protection, whatever color you like. I always go with black when I'm protecting myself because of the crystals associated with that, black tourmaline and obsidian. But you can put yourself in a gold bubble as well. This is where I feel like there's a rally call to bring visionaries together and create purposeful future timelines for our planet. That's not being done as far as I'm concerned, or maybe it's being done, maybe this group that you talked about, like this channeling group. Um, yeah, it's being done in more subtle ways. I'm seeing. I actually do it too. When I'm doing Akashic Answers with Emily, and we're doing the work ourselves, we're doing it. But when we're connecting to the grid and holding space for humanity, we're doing it too. But it needs
Mhm.
to be done at a higher level, you know?
Mhm. Well, that's why we're doing this call, because we're trying to tap into the higher level to see where we're at.
Yeah, and well, I mean, what the guides meant was to do it on a more conscious level. So, for example, what we would think of as a gathering of the ascended masters, who are the ascended masters here on the planet right now, who are waking up and figuring this out and come together with purposeful brainstorm and conversation about the direction humanity needs to go, and then shoot this into the grid.
Well, yes, we are shooting it into the grid, because just the
Yeah.
fact that we're discussing it is offering the records and the guides knowledge that we're aware of the situation.
Yes. Hmm. Well, let's just do it right now. Calling forward MBO, most benevolent outcome, highest timeline for humanity. Are you tingling anywhere?
A little bit.
Cool. All right. What are the questions you have?
So if you were in the Akashic realms, you are able to look at all events through history to this modern
Yes.
time, right?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So you'll see that we live in a time that has never experienced the kind of high technology that we're in right now. So looking back at moments in history, and there have been other times where humans have been depopulated. Look at the atomic bombs in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Look at all the wars that have taken place. But those have a kind of kinetic damage that will also destroy environment and animals. Now we're in a new phase where people have been injected with this bioweapon. They don't even know what's in it entirely. And if it can be activated with these 5G antennas, perhaps we're in a new stage of warfare. So perhaps the Akashic Records can help us understand this age we're in and how we may be able
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
answer.
You're right about when you talk about kinetic effect, you're right more than just in terms of the atomic bomb, but in other cycles of our history when we have fallen from grace or there's been, some disaster that's reset based, and the disaster being based on our consciousness, our shitty consciousness being out of control, and then like a wipeout coming. We are in, depending on where you look at it, or how you, this is a difficult one for perspective, because in some ways we're behind where we need to be in terms of advancement of collective consciousness, but only if you are in a dimension observing linear time. If you're in a dimension that's outside of the time space continuum, everything is perfect. And we do have that bleed through here as well too. So it's kind of like both things are true. And it's go time. Like
Yes.
regardless, it's go time.
Yes.
Um Sorry, I'm blipping in and out of the channel now. Let me just get it back. Usually that's because there's a really powerful frequency coming in, and I just need to up level bandwidth to hold it. What was the last thing you remember me saying?
Well, that we were holding this frequency, and that we are looking for the highest level
Yes.
out.
Well, we're not enough people know or have studied the seven hermetic principles and are recognizing that this is the principle of opposites or polarity that is playing out through the lower octave, because that's where the majority of energy is being focused. This energy, paranoia opposite is what? What is opposite? What?
Peronia. It's called
Pronia.
Peronia. Yes.
Okay. Fear, potential, same energy, exercise in opposite directions. Not enough of us know how to just exercise this in the opposite direction yet. And so we're actually propelling it from this cosmic standpoint.
Well, from this cosmic standpoint, humanity is at a crossroads because some people are awakened, other people are fast asleep and totally unaware, not only what they have injected into their body, but what might be coming down the pike as far as how that bioweapon could be further activated. So, Emily, I'm just worried that we may see a lot of carnage in the near future. And I would like to ask the guides how this can be mitigated. How can we perhaps put ourselves in a mind where we can be accepting of what might be coming? Crisis.
So Jedi mastery is the most important thing. It's being able to tame the thoughts, tame the body, tame the emotions. Not everybody's going to be at the place where they will, the guides are saying, like, agree to meditate. That's really, I mean, meditate for 10 minutes a day and you'll learn a command over your subtle energy body in a way that the leaders and visionaries must have moving forward. It feels like to me in this moment, actually, I can feel into two timelines. And the bright, happy, sunshiny Pollyanna one where we get birth, this feels much better. So I'm going to stay in that one. And if there is carnage, like you said, it also feels like, it could go that way too. It doesn't feel like we're that far away from it, like all hell breaking loose. Okay, so and here's the thing. You know this because you know me personally, but there has been a crazy initiation in my life in the past 6 months through my kids. And while it's been really traumatic, and I still am healing from it and feeling like yesterday in court, like lots of processing through the layers. I don't process that deeply, all those layers every day anymore because we've moved pretty fluidly through it. But life altering circumstances back to back with my children. And I still feel like I'm thriving and life is so good and positive through that experience. There was so much to learn. There was so much to heal. There was so much opportunity to champion a version of ourselves that didn't necessarily exist before that. And that's what we're going to be experiencing on the macro if it happens, and we'll do it to the best of our ability if it does. But it's going to require, the shit that usually inherently gets re-triggered in people when there's a big disaster, and there's this primal instinct to come together, to care about each other. There's a deconstruction of matter and materialism that keeps us attached to the world of the 10,000 things.
But we can also be smart about this and take precautions, such as how about go for a hike or a walk in the forest, or things we should be doing
Perfect.
anyways. Yeah, let's
Yeah,
just
and
go out for that day. What's the big deal?
and step into a level of self-leadership and self-initiation that you take ownership of what you're projecting into the field that day when you're connected with nature, and see the most benevolent outcome for the planet and for yourself. Do the work.
Yep.
Yeah.
Simply do the work.
Just do the work. What else? Any other questions?
Well,
you did have another question.
I did have another question. So I would just like to know, this is a big picture question.
Ooh, I like
what the Akashic Records can tell us about the future of humanity. Are we going to pull out of this? Is the human race going to go on? Are we going to still have a
I think that it is, and there's infinite possibility and there's choice. Because of infinite possibility, multiple timelines can exist at once, which we're seeing happening now when we talk about, oh, they're going back to, remember, infinite past, and they're talking about the Mandela effect. So we're already beginning to see evidence and bleed through of this. And you get to write your own ticket. You get to choose where you want to go. However, no bullshit's allowed up here in New Earth. It is baseline frequency, peace, love, and joy, or your ass doesn't get in. You go vibrate in another parallel realm where you match to that vibrational frequency. But we do have the opportunity to recreate this 5D Earth together. And I feel very aligned to that vision. I feel like I'm speaking through Emily now through a more personal perspective. And I feel like this has been inspired by my journey and the guides. I feel we are moving towards a 5D civilization, and it looks like rewriting a ton of the paradigms that are currently driving or our culture or are the structure of this society, from relationships to money to education to technology to medicine to our jobs. That's one area where I feel inspired very personally in terms of being an entrepreneur. This requires a culture where we discover our passions and our gifts and say, how am I going to serve humanity with this?
Yes.
And receive abundantly for it, in prosperity for it, and to work in collective and collaboration like this, right? At the genius level. That is a completely different experience of job that than the majority of humanity has right now. And they're enslaved and locked in that matrix of thought, feeling, history, repetition.
Brilliant answer. Never an easy solution, but one we have to look at the big picture to see how we're going to get through this. And I think we are going to get through this.
Yeah.
And my last question is, what does the golden age look like when we come through the dark side, when we can find peace in this world and peace in ourselves
It
and
looks
peace?
like that. It looks like you're in the now moment when you can find it in yourself and in the world, and you begin to look around and see it everywhere and bless it. Furthermore, the Hawaiians had this in the aloha spirit, the guides are saying, in that aloha is not just a greeting, but it's a blessing, it's an acknowledgement. And when we begin to acknowledge in the now moment everything that we want to see in the future, we bring it into being in the now. There is only the now. So that's the job for now, is seeing it everywhere where it already is, and stop pronouncing what isn't.
Yeah.
It'll also look pretty badass because it will look like the second coming of Christ, which is the Christic consciousness within each one of us, or all 12 strands of DNA coming online, where we have access to our full potentiality, not only as humans, but as a planet. They say Telos will give you a glimpse.
Talos always gives us a glimpse. We want to live that way. Let the surface humans live like the Telosians live, in peace and harmony, in the light.